So what kind of snack is that?
So Claire loves tangerines, and quite frankly, she could use all the vitamin C she can get.
Your dog is eating a tangerine? That's hysterical. And
Yep, it's her
loves,
favorite.
really? How did
She
you
loves
find that out?
tangerines. She's with me all the time, and I eat tangerines. So she just started eating them, and now she'll do anything for a tangerine, won't you? Will you do this for the tangerine? Will you do the interview? She might do the interview for the tangerine.
Oh, you know what? She might be a very good co-host.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Well, Claire, thanks for being with us. All right, everyone, we're so excited to have a wonderful guest joining us who has had a tremendous career already, 30 years as an attorney doing commercial law in a Milwaukee law firm. But many of us know her now as the fearless leader of Wisconsin Humane Society. So we're just really honored to welcome Ann Reed. Thank you.
Thanks, Catherine. It's a nice little break to talk to you guys.
Well, we are very excited that you took the time out of your incredibly busy schedule to share your thoughts and just talk with Kim and I about what's going on with you, your team, and we just want to know, how are you doing? How are you feeling?
Thanks. We're okay. We are okay. So obviously it's funny. It's funny. We are recording a video that someone might be watching after the coronavirus crisis, but as we sit here today, we are deep in it. Really starting what in my head at least is week 3 of very, very conscious and intentional response. When we get off this call, I should have the exact text of the order that's coming down in our state, the stay-at-home order, like the ones that have been issued in some other states over the last few days. So we are up to here, maybe up to here, and we're doing all right. We're doing all right. We are just so people know, through a series of merger transactions over the last several years, we run shelters in 5 counties in Wisconsin, plus, until we temporarily closed it last week, a spay-neuter clinic in the Milwaukee area. About 240 people working across those locations, and in normal times, intake of about 16,000 companion animals.
Wow. How is your staff right now, Ann?
They are, they're like everybody, right? So we're always so lucky in this field that people choose the work because they care so much about the work. And so there really is a deep and fundamental commitment to getting done what we need to get done that we are seeing across our organization. But at the same time, the people in our field are young. People in our field are not always, many people in our field don't have really a lot of financial resources to fall back on in their lives. They're seeing, we've got everybody still working, but they're seeing their boyfriends, their parents, their siblings getting laid off right and left right now, and they are worried about health. Of course, the fundamental thing about our work is that we can't close. Animals need to be fed, and so they see other people in their lives who can go back into their homes. The business can temporarily shut down. It's not easy, but at least it's clearly physically safe. And in animal welfare work, we have to navigate a line between making sure the work is still happening and keeping people safe, and it's nerve-wracking.
I know. So tell us about what your operation looks like today, because I think I saw something that you guys just moved into your new space because it was easier to get through this. So on top of dealing with this pandemic, you decided to pick up and move into a new shelter.
Only a part of our work. So, but that is kind of incredible. So all this time, one of our communities is Racine, Wisconsin. Our historic main community is Milwaukee, Wisconsin. But we are also the primary organization in Racine, which is the county to our south. And for the last year, we've been building a new building there to replace the terrible one that we inherited. And we had such plans. There were going to be grand openings, and there were going to be and there were going to be, and it's not a super fancy thing, but it is a nice building that is really going to give animals in that part of our service area the care that they need. And of course, it all went away. But then, I mean, half the trick of this is where are the little weird opportunities that are created. And so this was one. I wasn't the one who caught it, but one of our team did. As we were trying to consolidate animals, first of all, last week. Last week was the big Get Animals Out push. And so we were consolidating animals at Green Bay and Milwaukee, and that left us with very few animals at Racine, a new building to move into, and staff without as much to do as they would have had. So we quietly moved over there. The larger answer to your question is, in my head, I'm taking this in segments. And I found that it's really helpful to try to communicate it in segments. Like, here's where we were last week, here's where we are now, here's what next week might look like, although nobody has any idea. So the first week was really social distancing week, getting people who could work from home, getting that all out, focusing on social distancing. As we saw things start to develop, the possibility of stay-at-home orders, which at that time, that is to say, a million years or 1 week ago, only existed in Italy and Spain, but it was clear to see that might be coming. And so the idea that the window might close for adoption as we knew it, and that we were trying to get as much out the window as we could before it closed. So last week was our huge push to get animals out. It was wonderfully successful. All of our adoptable animals and tons more fosterable animals are out, and we are only at about 20% of our animals in shelter right now. So that was just an incredible success. And then this is what we're calling, and it was a long answer to your question, but this is what we're calling the pivot week. Like, now that the window closed, we landed, now what does our community need, and how can we provide that?
I feel like EDs, executive directors all over the country, are really they're all just trying to navigate this as they go along day by day, as you said. What would you tell them? What can they say to their staff to ease their minds? Like, what would be the one message you would have for EDs across the country when it comes to staff communication?
For us, it has not so much been a specific message. Certainly not an overriding message. I mean, I'm certainly trying to say, this is temporary. It's bad and it might last a long time, but it's temporary. And we and many other really historic organizations have the advantage of, I sent out to our staff not long ago, we survived 2 world wars and the 1918 flu pandemic. We've been here since 1879. This is not gonna kill us. But I think much more important than any particular message like that is just setting up messaging, and making sure, and just doing all the over communication that I always knew I should, and always wished I had, and always wished I were better at. But I wouldn't have called that a particular strength of mine before. But just communicating the heck out of it, both in terms of setting up new channels for people to get questions out, but also a great bit of my day for the last 2 weeks has been writing a fairly long email every single day to all staff. Just, here's the deal. Here's what's happening today.
So every day.
Every day. And people have said that they appreciate it. And it makes me feel better. There's so many things I personally can't do, so I can't get animals out myself. But I can write this thing, and so it's not so much what communicating, but we have found a lot of value in just communicating the heck out of it.
So you're saying that consistency and just hearing from the CEO every day, a message that's coming from the CEO to the entire staff, it probably brings some comfort and almost a sense of normalcy. Do you think that's the case?
People have said they really appreciate it. I think, I have to laugh and say, at least it shows I'm working on it, because they are long. We're able to communicate in those emails a lot of, we don't know this, we don't know this, we don't know this. So there's a transparency about that. one thing about this crisis is there is no ability to pretend you know what you're doing. So to get out there and say that you don't, and neither does any other CEO in America or the world. But I think people have appreciated that. It is ironic because every article you've ever read about leadership says you should do this, and I hope I keep some of what I've learned about it once we get through all this.
So speaking of not knowing what we're doing and navigating this new every day, you were really one of the first organizations that came out and said that, you know, spay neuter is just going to have to be non-essential unless it's emergency for a PIO or something like that. Talk to us about that. Like, how did you come to that? What happened? I mean, you really helped to lead other shelters across the country in this direction. And now we're trying to get government agencies on board. But the hardest shift in this is the animal advocates, because we've told them for so long, spay neuter, spay neuter, spay neuter. It's been driven into them. And now we're saying, oh, it's not essential anymore, so stop. Right. So just talk to us for a second about that.
Yeah, it's and we've I mean, now that I'm going on Zoom, we'll probably get even more pushback. We've gotten a little bit. God, I how to say all this in an organized way. So as of right this minute, at least the last time I knew, we had about on a census of total about a little over 300 animals, maybe 40 of them were unaltered. So it's at least right now it's not a ton. We'll see what comes in, and we'll see what we do. And it was one of those things where wherever I was looking for indicators, they were all pointing in this direction. So number one, the window to adopt might close, and we didn't know how hard it would close. It is actually now, I'm optimistic that we'll be able to do some adoption now under the order that's coming down in Wisconsin today, but we didn't know that last Monday. And it really could have been true that we couldn't adopt at all. And so the huge push was to get animals out before the window closed. And so now you're choosing between an animal going out unaltered or staying with you until the end of May. So one of the things we just keep saying over and over again is a lot of the decisions we have to make are between two very unpleasant alternatives, but that doesn't make them hard. It just makes it unpleasant. The choice between those two things is so clear. So there was that. There was the fact that we live in Wisconsin, where population dynamics are truly different. Non-pit dogs are just not an overpopulation problem here, period. And Sandra Newberry from the University of Wisconsin was really helpful in framing this up for me, and she's absolutely right. Yes, we have too many pit type dogs and too many cats seasonally in shelters. That's not, at this point in the North, that's not a problem we can spay neuter our way out of. It's where are the people that want them, as opposed to where are they, and that's a longer conversation. But in both of those, it's more of a supply disproportion than it is a spay neuter issue. So there's that. The biggest thing that flipped it for even our staff veterinarians is surgery requires oxygen, and human hospitals might not have it. And if you're choosing between, I mean, there are lots of unaltered pets in the world living happy lives with happy families. The choice of trying to neuter that animal and use oxygen that your grandmother might need, it just ended up not being at all difficult for us. And then people said, well, you're going to follow up afterward, right? And make people spay neuter. And we said, no. And we're not going to. We are not. We are letting go. We keep telling ourselves, we work in the same city where Harley Davidson Motor Company used to make motorcycles. And last week they stopped making motorcycles. If Harley Davidson can let go of making motorcycles, we can let go of this.
Nice.
Did you have any pushback from your staff? How did you communicate this to your staff in a way that really helped them be able to advocate for it?
Staff, once the vets really got the oxygen issue and so on. Staff really had no problem at all. We were just maniacally focused on getting animals out last week, and this was helping because you didn't have to wait. You could get this animal out right now. So we work hard to all the way through our staffing. We're all about length of stay, even on a normal day, and we've let go of a lot of things long ago, vet checks and landlord checks and all those kinds of things. So we're all deep believers in length of stay, and this was just an emergency layer on that basic philosophy. So in that sense, actually, staff wasn't the issue. There's a little bit of pushback from the outside world, but I don't really have time to talk them into it right now.
So there's been so much creativity and innovation in shelter response across the country. Just really fantastic things are happening for animals throughout this really scary time. Do you think that some of this response to COVID-19 is going to change the sheltering industry? Do you think we're going to do business differently in the future because of this?
I think the shift into foster, and it's I hope it creates permanent change. And it's been amazing. You were saying, Kim, at the beginning when we started to talk about just how many different animal shelters have done so much. And the amazing thing was we did not have time to coordinate. Suddenly everybody was getting animals out to foster, and you guys and others were getting great messaging out. It wasn't like we were entirely on our own, but nobody had time to coordinate a response to this. And yet everybody quickly understood that foster was going to be the thing. And boy, did our communities understand that. So right now, as I sit here, we're reaching out to other organizations because we have more fosters than we have animals, just because of what our team built in that incredibly short time. With one of our key staff members on the foster team quarantined because he just got back from Spain. But you can do a lot of that. A lot of it's on the phone and talking to people. So foster, I definitely think will help. The communications tools, the ability to work off site, getting that stuff right, all of that was, people were like, oh, I like email, I don't want to learn this new thing. Sometimes, not everybody, but just, okay, we're a Microsoft shop, this is Microsoft Teams, this meeting is happening on Microsoft Teams. That part I hope will stay. I think our communication tools suddenly had to get a whole lot better. And I have heard multiple people say any sorts of silos or personal stuff they were dealing, inter-team personal stuff they were dealing with, has been sort of burned away by this fire, and I hope it stays burned away. I'm sure there are teams where existing fault lines are made worse by this. That would be natural in human psychology. But the other thing that happens, and that I've just heard so many people tell me about, is their teams all that stuff just dissolved and the team came together.
With the Anne Reid message of collaboration and consolidation, do you think we'll see some of that?
Well, it's funny. That was the I firmly believe that fragmentation of our field is our greatest weakness, except for the even bigger weakness that we don't think it's a problem. And I'm doing this because I say that whenever anybody puts me in front of a microphone. So one of the things that killed me the last 2 weeks was I couldn't reach out to anybody. I was taking information from you guys and others that they were posting, but to try to coordinate something, there just wasn't time. You said, Catherine, I was a lawyer. I have never worked so hard as I have in the last 2 weeks, and all of us who are doing this, it's the same. So on Saturday, for the first time, again, the window closed. We were able to just slightly take a breath. And the first thing we were able to do was set up an email group of Wisconsin realtors. And I think that going forward will be important. Our wonderful director of animal sheltering, Allison, was saying a couple weeks ago, I keep quoting her, once this all lands, borders between organizations are going to be meaningless. Not in the sense of the pride and the history and the identification and all the important things about each organization's individual identity, But just if you've got an animal and I've got food, and the only thing between them is the line between our organizations, that's just not going to work right now.
Catherine, we have a superhero on the phone. What else are we asking her?
Well, that is true. So I want to hear more about what is your team talking about? I know that you're the CEO, and so maybe you don't get to hear everything that your team is talking about, but what are their conversations like? What are their concerns? What's bubbling to the top?
Sure. Well, a huge amount of it is just the individual, what you might call HR situations of individual employees. You say stay home if you have this, this, and this, and with 240-ish people, there are just a whole lot of possible permutations of that, and that takes up a huge amount of time, especially when individual people are anxious about their symptoms naturally, and we're anxious about whether their symptoms are coming in. So that's a big block of time that I wish we had more resources for, and we have to be careful not to keep it. It needs big boundaries, but to keep it in its boundaries and not let it take over everything else. Responding to change in the middle of the day. I mean, when we scheduled this call, there was no Wisconsin order coming down, and now I sit here and I know that it is. And what was that? 12 hours.
Mm-hmm.
So there's just being in touch. Really, trying now, especially to be sure that people's individual personal situations are reflected in our meetings. So, like, again, this is something that you always read you should do, and I always felt touchy-feely for an old crotchety lawyer, which is to go around the room and say, how are you, before we start talking, because now it matters. We have a team member whose brother's a doctor who just went from his admin role to a frontline role. For her to have a minute to share that today that's really important. So we are trying to talk about each other's personal situations as well. Again, I mean, nobody focuses on getting the work done like our team, but so it takes a little effort to say, and you're okay, right? You're okay.
That's great. What are some words of wisdom, since you've been in this for 3 weeks now? What could you share, or what is it that you wish you knew 3 weeks ago? What would you do differently?
Do differently, I would have been faster. I mean, there's not a day when I haven't wished that I had been 2 days ahead of it, and or 2 weeks ahead of it. I think we were a little bit ahead of the game, and I hope that helped keep some people healthy at the very least. There's no question that we started our press to get animals out not a moment too soon. But I've always sort of, we all have different skills, and I've always sort of thought that one of mine was a little bit of more of a future orientation than a lot of people are set to. But boy, I wish it was farther out, and I wish I were more confident about acting on it. So that's the first thing. As far as advice, the biggest thing I've learned is this, for what it's worth. Stress like this freezes up everybody's thinking, yours and your team's and everything. Stress freezes you up. Especially stress that is created by something that is completely new, because what our brains want to do is find old reference points. This is like this is like that. Well, this isn't like anything. And so your brain keeps reaching for stuff that isn't a good analogy, and it keeps wanting to hold on tight to that stuff. Sorry about my hands, but it's important to communicate this. So brains are freezing up. Your brain is freezing up at a time when you need the most flexible, open thinking that you can possibly get. So number one, to name that, but number two, what to do about it. So if a particular group comes back and says, we want to do this, and you're the leader, and you see that they got to that place because they're pretty frozen up and they need to get more open. Well, if you come down and say, no, you're frozen up, here's what we're really going to do, You might get to a result you like better in that moment, but you've taught your team not to trust their own thinking, and that's not going to do you any good when you need to make 12 more decisions yet today and you don't know what they are yet. So that balance of just trying to find ways to remind people that they have the skills they need to think outside of old patterns. And Spayingneuter was a big one for us. We got a little bit of a slow ramp on that at the very beginning. It wasn't like everybody said, "Oh, cool." And so for me, that task was to help the team have enough confidence in their own ability to think outside the box, rather than imposing my thinking outside the box, such as it was. Am I making sense? People are
Absolutely.
you can't just be flexible yourself and impose that. You've got to help them learn to unfreeze. And I see a lot of businesses and decisions that get stuck because people have frozen up.
What has been your most proud moment over these past few weeks? I mean, has there been a moment where you could even catch your breath and just say, wow, that was impressive?
It was funny. So Friday was the day that we ended open adoption hours, and we I know I keep using different analogies, but we landed the plane like, okay, the window is closed. And we did a big Facebook post, and I put it out there talking about how exciting it was that we'd gotten all of these animals out. And then the next day, the local paper picked it up, and the headline was, "Every available animal at the Wisconsin Humane Society is placed." Okay, that's my organization. It's based on the Facebook story I just shared. And yet I looked at that headline and I went, wow, we really did do that. That was, that was a moment. There was so much, this is important. Why can't we do that too? This is important. Why can't we do that too? We were closing the clinic. We were, and we all kept saying over and over again, we have one singular mission this week, is to get animals out. And that the way people just reoriented to that and really did do it, I am truly, truly, truly proud.
That's a great, great story to share, and so inspiring. We hope that you'll continue to have amazing experiences. We hope that you'll continue to have that collaboration and cooperation that you're experiencing. And we hope that you'll continue to share your story with us as we continue this journey together. It's been a real pleasure having you, and we're just grateful that you took the time out of your busy schedule to be with us.
Well, let me send that back out at you, because you guys both, the association and HSUS, have been from the start putting out such valuable information. It means the world to me and my team, and we're really grateful.
Thank you so much for your leadership.
Thank you.
Claire, thank you for being part of the hosting experience.
So everybody should stay home, stay safe, and make sure you wash your fomite.
Absolutely. Until tomorrow, everyone, have a good night.